Hello and welcome to MacStories Unwind. I'm John Voorhees, and with me on video once again is Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Federico. I had a weird day yesterday, though. Today's seemingly normal so far, but we were supposed to record this episode yesterday, but something happened. Which resulted in
an explosion happened.
Well, it resulted in a text message summary being sent to you that said explosion nearby, which is kind of true, not entirely true, because I was sitting at my desk on a Zoom call when I heard a very loud noise, loud enough that I literally got up in the middle of the call. I kind of jumped up because I was startled and looked out the window because it sounded like something had happened out on the street right outside my window. I didn't see anything and I didn't know what was going on. And then I realized my power had gone out. And it turns out that some work crews had hit a power line nearby, a block or two over, and the sound, there was some kind of explosion. I don't know if anybody got hurt, hopefully not, but the sound bounced off the houses across the street from me, and it sounded like it was right in front of my house, but it was a couple blocks away. In any event, I had to kind of get out of the house because it was really cold and I had a bunch of stuff going on. And so I texted you and said in messages, this thing has happened. I'm going to go work off from a coffee shop. It sounded like an explosion had happened. And all you got was something that said explosion nearby, right?
It said explosion nearby and my heart sank for a minute.
I understand why. Your mind doesn't go good places when you hear about explosions, and it was out of context. That's the problem with a lot of these summaries is that it's like my message was not that dire. It was like something to the effect of it sounded like there was an explosion nearby, and had a lot more context to it than that. That wouldn't have probably been alarming if you had seen the whole thing right off the bat. But you just got the summary.
Sometimes you can be too concise for it to worry people. And that's when I expanded the message, it was like, oh my God, but I understand now. But the summary was pretty bad. Anyway, I'm glad you're back home and everything was resolved
the power's back
pretty
on
quickly.
And we're recording a show. Yeah, it ended up not being that big of a deal, but it was quite a disruption at the time.
Yeah, I see an interesting question in our Unplugged segment.
Yeah.
So there's a question that says, what is something new you learned to cook recently?
Yes. I was thinking about this because I've been trying to, now that we're in the new year, I guess, and things have settled down from the holidays, step back and take a little time and look up some recipes, find some good things, some healthy things for, to eat in the evenings, and thinking about things I want to learn to cook. And so I thought I would ask you, because I have one thing, but I thought I'd let you go first.
Got a couple of things. One is a pretty common thing. I learned how to cook a pumpkin.
Oh, okay.
You can get a pumpkin and you can obviously peel it and you can slice it. You can make it like little cubes basically, and then I have been roasting them in an oven. So you put, for example, we like to put salt, black pepper, some turmeric, for example, some rosemary to give it a bit of a flavor, and then the effect is kind of similar to roasted potatoes.
Do you put them in any olive oil or anything to kind of like
olive oil, obviously.
That's usually what I do. Yeah,
extra virgin olive oil because that's what you gotta use.
The good stuff.
The good stuff. So that's what we've been doing that. I actually have another pumpkin in the fridge that I gotta cook one of these days. This week I also cooked for the very first time what is technically called a celeriac, most commonly known as a celery root.
Oh, okay. So just like, okay.
It's like a round-shaped root. It's a type of celery root.
I see.
Kind of tastes like celery, but it has the consistency of, again, kind of like a pumpkin, kind of like potato. It's got that, it can be a little chunky. And I saw some recipes online. Some people slice them up as chips, like as thick chips, like vertical shaped chips. I've just done the cubes again, like the little cubes again.
Yeah.
put them in an oven. Same idea. Some olive oils, the kind of the spices that you prefer, the condiments that you prefer, and then it just kind of tastes like celery. So it kind of feels like potatoes, but it doesn't taste like potatoes.
Got it.
This is part of our we are now at a full year without meat.
Okay.
We're not vegan because we eat eggs and dairy and fish.
Sure.
We are cutting back on fish, which is a little more tricky because we love seafood. But I stopped eating meat. Sylvia and I, we stopped eating meat January of last year, and I don't really miss it. Sure, I haven't had a carbonara in a year, and sometimes I miss it. But like I just felt that I just as a principle like thing for me. Like I just didn't want to eat meat anymore.
Yeah.
But like I said, we're not vegan. We're not. We're not doing the vegan diet. Just cutting back on meat consumption. And so we've been looking for the whole year. We've been looking for alternatives. So we have over the past year, I have learned how to cook a lot more than before. Like all types of beans. I've tried, like obviously the typical Italian beans, but also some of the more exotic ones, like Japanese red beans, something that we've tried. We have gotten really big on we're now trying like soy-based products. So obviously soy sauce, but like tofu, for example.
Yeah.
Just all these things sort of like to replace meat, because otherwise we'll just be eating like a lot of carbs.
You have to. That's the one thing you have to be careful and still get your protein and other things like that.
You still gotta get your protein. So that's these are two technically vegetables. I think both pumpkin and celery root are vegetables.
Sure.
That I've cooked lately. Yeah.
All right, that's interesting. Well, those are both very good wintertime types of vegetables. It sounds like a root vegetable and a pumpkin. We do a lot of that kind of thing too. A lot of times, sweet potatoes and
yes,
that sort of thing. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I would miss meat too much either if I quit it. I haven't quit eating meat, but it's very funny around our house is that during the holidays when our kids are home.
Oh yeah, the kids love the meat.
They love the meat. They love the big have the hamburgers and the steak and chicken and all that. So we end up having a lot more meat at the holidays, and then Jennifer and I just go cold turkey afterwards and just don't have meat for weeks at a time afterwards to kind of detox from all the meat, and then then we'll have it once in a while. But the thing that I learned to cook the other day, I guess about a week ago, which is very simple, but it's something that actually I had heard you talk about, I think, in the past, which is just the overnight oats.
Man, yes.
Yes. And I went through Mela, the wonderful recipe app by Silvio Rizzi, and I looked at a bunch of RSS feeds I have in there and found a few different recipes. And the first kind I tried, I made with espresso and some chocolate in it. Then I also did some with fruit and almond butter, which was very, very good.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So I've been trying a bunch of different things. Put a little bit of little Greek yogurt in there as well as the almond milk to make them smooth, and then have a combination of fruit and maybe a little cinnamon, that kind of thing.
Cinnamon is great. Have you tried with raisins?
I have not done raisins yet. No.
Because they get softer the next morning. And they're so sweet. That's a huge overnight oats person.
Yeah, and it's just new to me. I never really thought about it, and it's so easy to make them. I mean, it's just really just mix these things up in a bowl, and you can even put them in serving dishes and keep them in the fridge so that you have a few days of it ready to go. And it's filling, which is good. Keeps you from snacking, and it's depending what you put in it, of course, but it's relatively healthy.
And it just feels very fresh when you eat it.
It does.
It's very nice. Something else that actually Sylvia got me into this. So Sylvia has been cutting back on espresso. On coffee. She now drinks one espresso only a day, and not every day even. Instead, so she found this. She follows a lot of Instagram pages. She's a lot more into healthy eating and following these pages and these groups on Instagram than I am. But she found this multiple Instagram food bloggers, whatever, recommending this coffee alternative. Which would be to use, obviously hot water and cocoa powder. like just straight up pure cocoa powder with no sugar, just
unsweetened chocolate, basically.
Unsweetened cocoa powder from South America, from the Dominican Republic, I want to say.
Okay.
And it's like 98% pure or something like that.
Sure.
And we have this store nearby that sells a lot of this, like, in theory, ethically sourced, exotic foreign products. Let me tell you, they are very expensive. But you basically take like a couple of teaspoons of cocoa powder, and you put them in a tall, like, glass, and then you pour in an espresso cup the same amount of water that you would put in an espresso. You put the water in, and you use a little, like, one of those, like, electronic milk foam stir things.
Yeah, we have one of those.
You stir it for like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
You do like a bunch of motions, like up and down and sideways, so that air gets in and it creates a little foam. And then you pour it in an espresso cup. You have the foam layer at the top, and then you drink it. And so it's hot like an espresso. It tastes like chocolate. It doesn't have milk in it, so it kind of breaks your brain, because you're thinking, oh, this is a hot wintry chocolate, but it's just water and cocoa powder. And it does. So the theory would be that it's got a pretty good, like, amount of protein inside, and so it does give you that sort of kick, I still drink personally like 3 espressos a day, but the 4th one, I'm doing the cocoa powder with Sylvia after lunch.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I have gotten to the point where coffee in the afternoon does not always sit well with me. I sometimes keeps me awake at night. So I drink way too much coffee. That's something I should probably cut back on. It's funny that you mentioned using the little handheld blender thing to make the foam, because the overnight oats that I made that had the espresso in it, one of the things you did the next morning right before you served it was something very similar, using instant coffee and hot water.
I've also done. Oh, we've been doing the same things. Yes.
Make this and then pour that on top of the oats, and it creates a nice little foamy.
Let me give you a tip for the summertime. So you prepare, whether you have a machine or you have the little plastic bags. Prepare beforehand some ice cubes.
Okay.
Then you grab a glass. Mix the instant coffee with some cold water, so that it creates a little foam. Put a couple of ice cubes in there, and it's an excellent fake cold brew for the summer that you can prepare in like 30 seconds.
Oh, that sounds really good. I'll have to check that out. Oh, very good, very good. Well, we hope we've given people some ideas on our cooking podcast.
What's the name? MacStories Uncooked?
Uncooked, yes.
All right, John, I got a couple of things for you.
Okay, good. What do you have, Federico?
The first one is me catching up with the times.
How so?
I am watching, for the very first time, Friends.
The first time?
For the first time in my life.
Oh,
I am watching
right.
Friends. I started on Netflix, and then I learned that on HBO, well, it's not HBO, it's Max. On Max, you can watch it in a remastered 4K Ultra HD version.
Okay.
So I signed up for Max again, and we've been watching Friends. And
how does it hold up? How does it hold up for modern times? Because I watched it back in the 90s when it came out, whenever that was.
I think really well. And I was not expecting, especially if you watch, it's almost like exactly when we watched Sex and the City in 4K. That 4K version, when you're watching an old TV show and the quality of the image screams, I'm an old TV show.
Right.
With 4K, it kind of compensates for that. Obviously, the fashion, the city, the objects that people are using, like you can tell that it's old. But the quality of the image sort of gives you that illusion that maybe it's like, maybe it's a modern TV show just set in the 90s.
Yeah, it was probably 720p when it came out originally, I think.
Probably not, probably even 480p.
Yeah, maybe.
I would say that we're season 1. We started 2 days ago.
Okay.
Season 1, and so far, the character of Ross is really resonating with me. Sort of that, like, sometimes introvert guy that can be very sarcastic. That's very much my type of like my sort of humor in real life. Being very sarcastic, having that that joke always ready to go. It's So far, I'm a Ross person, but we'll see. We'll see.
All right.
We'll see.
Very good. Yeah. Very good. What else you have for me?
The other thing I finished, I think I mentioned this on the show before. I finished 1,000 Times Resist, the video game.
Oh, nice.
I do not want to spoil it because it's a whole thing. I would say go play this game. It's has to be one of the most innovative games I've ever played. It's
really.
I don't even know how to describe it. It's not a point and click adventure. It's not an action game. It's not a puzzle game, although sometimes it can be. It's a story.
I always thought it was kind of like an RPG, but it's not an RPG at all.
No.
I know very little about this game. Obviously.
No. It's a visual story with obviously some interaction. It's a very peculiar story about a lot of different themes. Instead, I would say play this game. It's gonna take you probably less than 20 hours. It's not a long game.
Okay.
And then go listen. I'm going to give a shout out here. On the same network, the worst garbage done online of Into the Aether, obviously from friend of the show and our fellow co-host Brandon Bigley on MPC. But on the same podcast network, they have another show called .zip. And on .zip, they did a 5-hour episode unpacking the whole theme and every idea behind 1,000 Times Resist. So I'm going to give a shout out to this game and that podcast episode in particular. So that's all I'm going to say. Incredibly worth it. This is this development studio's first game ever.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
And you can tell that the people that worked on this game, they come from all kinds of different artistic backgrounds, including the visual arts, theater, painting, all sorts of different places, and you can see those influences in a video game that is one of the most incredibly moving and strange, in a good way, artistic creations I have played as a video game in to my memory.
Yeah, it's always interesting when people come into a medium from a different background because they really can bring new ideas, and it sounds like that happened here. Yeah. All right, well, I've got a fun movie for you, Federico. It's called Alien Romulus, which is
this is scary. This is scary, right?
It's scary. I've always enjoyed the Alien movies, and this one was really good. It did quite well at the box office. I watched it over the holidays towards the end of the Christmas New Year's season. And it follows a group of young people. I almost felt like it's very different in some ways than the original Alien movies, which were like scientists going out and exploring space and encountering these violent aliens. This was like a ragtag group of teenagers or young adults who were trying to escape a bad life on a planet. And they have an idea. They're going to go to this abandoned spaceship circling their planet. They're going to grab the fuel from that spaceship. They're going to use it on their ship, and they're going to go off to another place that has, a beautiful place that's not constantly dark and grimy and, working in mines is what they were doing on this planet. So they go out to this spaceship, and it turns out it's one of the spaceships that had been attacked by aliens in the past. And very quickly, they find themselves trapped on this spaceship and being pursued by the alien creatures that they inadvertently let loose that had been kind of suspended, I guess, for many, many years. And one of the things that is interesting is they recreated the original android from the very first movie back in the late 70s. The actor who played that part is the same person who played Bilbo Baggins in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and he has since passed away. I did not know that when I watched this movie. They recreated him with CGI and a puppet. And I guess in the theatrical release, they didn't have enough time to really finish the CGI, and it wasn't very good. And it drew a lot of backlash for bringing back an actor who had passed away, although they had gotten the approval of his estate, a lot of people found it kind of grotesque because he was the android who got ripped in half in the original movie. And so in this movie, he's basically he's like from the stomach up. He's like, just a head, arms, and part of a torso. And they reanimate him, and he's kind of a character throughout the story. I didn't know any of this, and I guess they cleaned up the CGI for the streaming release because this is on Max as well, and it was perfectly fine. Had I known that this actor had passed away, I think I might have felt differently about it. But I thought at least for streaming, the CGI is pretty well cleaned up, and it fits in pretty well with the story. But it's a really good, fast, action-paced, horror kind of thriller movie where these kids are being chased by the alien, and I don't want to give it away, but of course, like all the alien movies, not everybody survives.
Okay.
Things happen, but
right.
there's always somebody saves the day at the end too. So this one is it's really well worth watching, especially if you've already got Max for some reason. I would suggest streaming it.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, Federico, that's it for this week's episode of MacStories Unwind. We will be back next week, hopefully at the regular time, if there are no explosions.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you later, Federico.
Ciao, John.